Welcome to This Explainer. Right now, we're living through an absolutely massive technological leap that is fundamentally changing our relationship with artificial intelligence. Up until very recently, our interaction with AI was, well, pretty limited. You'd type a question into a text-based chatbot, sit back, and wait for a text response. It was simple, but it was completely passive. Well, that era is rapidly ending. We're moving away from simple text chatbots and stepping into the world of fully autonomous systems. If you haven't heard the term agents yet, buckle up because they're about to completely transform how you interact with technology.
Think about it like this. Traditionally, we're used to passive chatbots that are totally limited to just generating text. You prompt them, they reply. But this new paradigm, it's all about autonomous agents taking real action. It's the difference between asking someone for a recipe and having a personal chef literally walk into your kitchen, find the ingredients, and cook the whole meal for you. It's a completely active, dynamic way of using artificial intelligence.
Let's dive into Section 1, the Agent Revolution. This is the paradigm shift in artificial intelligence.
So, what actually is Agentic AI? Well, it's not just another chat program. It's an active digital entity. You give it a specific objective, and the agent autonomously decides the steps it needs to take to get there. It can reason, it can plan, and it can use tools all on its own. To put that into perspective, if you give an agent the right permissions, it can open programs on your computer, search the internet, grab your files, and even reply to messages on WhatsApp or Telegram entirely on its own. It's basically an active participant in your digital life.
There's a real fever around these agents right now, and a few major players are leading the charge. The one that really kicked off this current boom is OpenClaw. It's easily the most famous agent out there today, and it's responsible for democratizing this tech for everyday users. Following its massive success, we're seeing some really potent alternatives popping up, like Zero Claw. And if you're in the enterprise world, you've got highly specialized solutions like the Nvidia Corporate Agent, which is built specifically for companies that need extreme locked-down data security.
Moving on to Section 2, a brain in the cloud. Let's look at how this massive AI actually runs on your personal machine. There's a quote from our source material that just hits the nail on the head. Your computer only runs the environment, while the brain is in the cloud. One of the absolute marvels of this technology is that you do not need some giant supercomputer in your house to use it. You can run an incredibly capable agent right on your standard PC. And the reason your computer doesn't just crash under the weight of all that intelligence, the heavy lifting isn't happening on your hardware. The brain lives entirely up in the cloud. Here is the exact step-by-step logic of how that works. First, you, the user, give it an objective. Next, your local agent reaches out via an API and connects to a massive language model online. It's essentially asking the cloud brain, okay, what do I do next? Finally, the cloud brain sends the instructions back, and the agent executes those actions locally right on your PC. It's this continuous, seamless loop between your computer and the cloud. To keep that cloud connection running smoothly, a lot of people rely on operators like OpenRouter. It's a real game changer because of the flexibility it offers. With just one single API key, you get access to a massive catalog of different AI models. You can actively switch between them depending on how complicated your task is. Even better, you can set up fallback options. So if your primary model suddenly crashes or goes offline, your agent automatically switches to a backup brain without skipping a beat. Section 3, Intelligence Anywhere. We're talking everything from mini PCs to tiny microcontrollers. Okay, what we're seeing now is straight out of science fiction. Because the heavy processing happens in the cloud, you can run these agents on surprisingly tiny, dirt-cheap hardware. Think about a standard Raspberry Pi. You can build a super-powered voice assistant with a virtual avatar on a screen that literally drafts documents and writes code while you're talking to it. And it gets even smaller. You can actually run these autonomous agents on ultra-cheap ESP32 microcontrollers. The magic of this minimal hardware is what it can do around the clock. On those tiny ESP32 chips, the agent can autonomously write, compile, and install programs at your request. Imagine a tiny little screen hooked up to a chip, constantly showing you the live weather or a real-time Bitcoin tracker. The agent writes the code and runs it entirely on its own. It's doing this 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. And the electricity cost? It's absolutely laughable. You're basically running it on pennies. Which brings us to Section 4, the model war. It really comes down to performance versus cost. To understand this landscape, we have to look at the actual fuel for these agents. It's a massive race right now to optimize this tech so it costs less. On the left, you have the high-end powerhouses.
In the middle, there's a huge wave of incredibly competitive Asian economical models. And on the right, Western economical models designed to drive costs down. When your agent needs a brain, this table is basically the menu it's ordering from.
Let's talk about the heavy hitters first. It's pretty well known that the best models for complex stuff are also the most expensive. Claude from Anthropic is hands down the gold standard right now for reasoning and autonomous programming. But here's the catch. The server power required to run Claude is just brutal. It's so intense that Anthropic actually had to restrict its use as an agent on standard paid accounts, mostly locking it down for enterprise use. Because the high-end stuff is so pricey and restricted, the Asian market has completely exploded onto the scene. Models like Kimi, Qwen, and Minimax are proving to be really reliable. But DeepSeek 4 Flash definitely deserves a special shout-out. It's immensely popular right now because it's extremely cheap, but it doesn't sacrifice too much quality. Just keep in mind the golden rule from our sources. These smaller, cheaper models, they're really only good for simple tasks. If you need serious, complex reasoning, you're still going to have to invest in the high-end models.
Section 5, the dangers of the new power. Let's take a look at the dark side of all this autonomy.
Like any massive tech revolution, agentic AI brings some pretty serious shadows with it. There are 3 big ones you need to watch out for. First, security. If you give an AI the power to navigate and execute files on your local computer, you're opening the door to some major vulnerabilities if it isn't locked down. Second is economic, specifically those surprise bills from runaway API usage. And third is environmental, because the demand for electricity and hardware right now is absolutely staggering.
Let's zoom in on that economic danger for a second, because this is a very real problem for everyday users. Agents work in cycles. They try an action, check if it worked, and try again. Well, what happens if an agent gets trapped in an infinite loop trying to fix an impossible error? It just keeps pinging that paid API over and over again. If you don't have strict cost limits set up, you could wake up to a surprise bill of hundreds of euros that racked up in just a few hours. No way you want that. And looking at the macro scale, the sheer hype around things like OpenClaw has caused global AI demand to skyrocket. We are neutrally looking at the data here, and it shows a massive spike in electricity consumption by data centers. There is a voracious need for new hardware, especially highly coveted graphics cards and RAM. This immense physical demand is actively fueling some really heated debates regarding the long-term environmental impact and sustainability of artificial intelligence.
So, what's the big takeaway from this explainer? The era of agentic AI isn't coming, it's already here. We literally have assistants that can work for us while we sleep, running on devices that fit in the palm of our hand. But with that immense power comes the need for immense control. As we step into this wild new autonomous world, I want to leave you with this final thought. How are you going to tame this magic before it turns into a security or economic headache? Thanks for joining me for this explainer, and keep exploring.